Of course, I could look on the map and see that Syria and Iraq are neighbors. But what I wasn't seeing and what I didn't understand and what most IQD investors have never been told is that Syria is more important to Iraq's economy and Iraq's well-being than Iran. Now, listen, stay with me for a moment. During these 5 years of research on the Iraqi dinar and Iraq and the Iraqi people, the Iraqi government, I have always, in the Middle East news, the news from the Middle East, seen Iraq and Syria paired up in reports. Now, silly me, I didn't understand Syria and Iraq hold hands much, much tighter than Iraq and Iran. So I went back and I looked at and tried to understand why I made the mistake that I made. Well, one, Iran is aggressive. Iran is under sanctions. Iran is hungry. They need food. They need shelter. They need their helicopters repaired because they are falling out of the sky, killing their dignitaries. Iran needs money. And for some strange reason, they blame Iraq for the West being in the Middle East. Never mind that they attacked the U.S. Embassy and did things that was not cool. They still want to lean on Iraq. And Iraq is good-hearted as a whole. They are a patient people, a very calm person or people until it's time to protest. They love to protest, and as you have seen in the news, Iraq is not having it. They're saying, no, we're not going to have that. And as you also know, it was a protest that started the civil war in Syria. So protesters are very, very important. And if you're new to this channel and all of a sudden you see breaking news, protests in Iraq, and you're trying to figure out what the hell is this woman talking about? A protest? It's just a protest. How come it's break? It's a big deal in the Middle East when Arabs, when Iraqis start protesting. That's serious, serious. And therefore, we report any major protests. Protests in Iraq have unleveled the entire government, so to speak. Prime Minister had to quit. Presidents had to quit. They have dismantled the entire government almost. Protests have done this in Iraq. So we take protests very, very serious, especially when we are allowed the information on the protests. See, there's a lot of little things going on in Iraq and the Middle East that we don't know about because they don't report it. If you go to the blogs and the channels that only report in the basic local languages and you transcribe the information, then you can get a better understanding. But also these little blogs and unofficial news portals that only report in the language of the country in the Middle East, sometimes they don't tell the truth. And that's where the peers, my peers here on YouTube, sometimes get a little stuck. They listen to these types of reports and they report the information back to viewers. I do not do that. One of the reasons is because I worked for major television in my younger years. I worked for CBS San Francisco, and I saw how the news works. I was a video engineer, and I saw how we'd hear news come down the pipeline. And We were not confused. We were highly paid technical engineers. We were nowhere near confused about what we heard. But when we started to queue up the news and to prepare so that the director could put the news on the air, either breaking news or at the 6, 7, or 11 news show, which I worked, they would change the information. Now, if you tell them I said that, I'm going to say, I'm getting older and I don't remember. But I'm telling you the truth. The information sometimes would be changed. Therefore, I know, not because someone told me, but because I experienced it in my workplace, that all news is not reported exactly as it happens, or even when it happens. The news cycle, we walk together. Now, if you can walk outside of the news cycle, and YouTube is really good for that, you can walk out of it. You can walk outside the group. But when they want to destroy you, they will, and they can. And that's why I try to stay in step with the major news cycle. Now, I said all that to say, yes, silly me. I look at the map, I see that Syria is Iraq's neighbor. But what I didn't see was what I'm going to allow the channel's voiceover to explain to you.
Syria and Iraq share a long, porous border, which means anything that happens in Syria can quickly spill over into Iraq. When Syria becomes unstable, whether due to war, terrorism, or economic collapse, Iraq feels the pressure almost immediately. Terrorist groups, smugglers, and armed militias often move back and forth across the border, taking advantage of weak security on either side. This is why Iraq closely watches Syria's internal situation. If Syria becomes less secure, Iraq must spend more resources protecting its own border, its cities, and its people. The two countries are tied together geographically, and instability in one almost always affects the other. Economically, Syria's decisions influence Iraq's ability to trade, move goods, and maintain stable energy routes. Syria controls important land corridors that Iraq needs to reach the Mediterranean Sea. When relations are stable, Iraq can export goods more easily and support regional trade. But when Syria is in conflict or cooperating with groups hostile to Iraq, these routes become dangerous or unusable. Also, millions of Syrians fleeing war have entered Iraq over the years, adding to Iraq's humanitarian challenges. So Syria's economic choices, border policies, and internal stability directly impact Iraq's economy, cost of living, and government spending. Politically, Syria is deeply connected to Iran, and Iran holds major influence inside Iraq. What Syria allows Iran to do, especially regarding weapons transfers or militia operations, shapes Iraq's internal security landscape. Many of the Iran-backed groups active in Iraq coordinate with fighters in Syria. If Syria gives these groups more freedom to move weapons or personnel across the region, Iraq becomes more vulnerable to militia pressure, political interference, and attacks on its own territory. In simple terms, Syria's cooperation with Iran can strengthen or weaken Iran's network inside Iraq, which affects everything from elections to national security. Finally, Syria matters to Iraq because both countries face the same threats: terrorism, drug smuggling, and foreign interference. To truly defeat ISIS and other extremist groups, Iraq depends on what Syria does, especially in eastern Syria, where ISIS remnants still operate. Drug trafficking, especially the regional Captagon trade, flows heavily through Syria and into Iraq, fueling crime and corruption. If Syria cracks down on these activities, Iraq benefits. But if Syria looks the other way, Iraq pays the price. This shared security environment means Iraq cannot achieve long-term stability unless Syria is stable as well. What happens in Syria shapes Iraq's future, its safety, and its path towards stronger independence.